Hello and welcome everybody to the Wednesday stream. Welcome to all you modelers out there. Welcome to the Wednesday stream. I'm Bryan Bentley. I will be your streamer today. As we've been doing for the last couple weeks, we'll be working on the Palindrone Bot, still closing in on the finish line of the modeling. I may even get into some texturing. Probably gonna get into some UV mapping today. Who knows? I'm your streamer. I'm Bryan Bentley. I'm the department head of modeling here at CG Spectrum. Go to CG Spectrum for all of your 3D modeling needs. CG Spectrum /3D modeling. 3cgspectrum.com/3D modeling. Okay. Still working on the Palindrone Bot. So, hopefully today, what I'm going to get into is, definitely today, what I'm going to get into is, I'm going to be adding, I'm going to be adding these little wiry bits on the inside of here. And, if you guys were here last week, I did a little bit of proceduralism with these little bolts here. So I'm going to kind of like take that, I'm going to ratchet that up to 11, take that to the nth degree. I'm going to pop over and we're going to be doing some scattering to Maya. So I want to show you how you can jump between, we started in ZBrush, now we're in Maya, then we'll go into Houdini, and then we'll be back into Maya, and then we'll be back into Substance Painter. So I always get asked the question, what's the best program? What's the best program? What's the best program to use? And my answer, as almost every seasoned 3D professional will tell you, is there is no best program. The best program is, firstly, the one you have in front of you. And then secondly, the best one, the one that does the job the best. So who does things like this, like scattering and randomness, very, 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 very well. That's its bread and butter. Like, so I kind of think of, and I could have even gone and did these bolts in Houdini, but I wanted to play around with Mesh. This is it's a safe place to learn new stuff. Okay, so I want to scatter. I want to make these my glass piece and my brain out to Houdini. So I think I was gonna do these little lines in geometry, but I think what I'm gonna do now is they're so small. I think I might end up doing those in the texture. I might do these as a normal map because they're not like big silhouette changers. So I think that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to export my little brain here as an OBJ. So I'm going to say File, Export Selection, export that as an OBJ, and I'm going to go up. So Palindrone Bot. Palindrone Bot here. So I have my Maya projects, reference, So now, if I'm going into Houdini, I need to keep everything nice and clean. Houdini projects. Cool. So, I'm gonna put, so I'm gonna take that and I'll put it here, say OBJs. And I'll put that inside there. So we'll call brain for Houdini. Brain for Houdini. Export selection. Okay. And then the next thing I need is to send out my Glassstone. So here. So I'm going to say File, Export Selection. It's brain for Houdini. This will be glass for Houdini. Okay, so let's pop over to Houdini, which I already have open because good Mr. Martha Stewart person. Okay, so the first thing I want to do in here is I want to make a project. Now, this is so small, I might not need to make a project, but it's always a good idea to make a project just in case things start to get bigger and more complicated. So I'm going to say File, New Project, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that, that path. Seconds. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's gonna go into what do I call it? I want to call this Cortex project. Call this Cortex. Say accept, and we'll call this project Cortex. And say accept. So now in that folder, I have Cortex, I have Project Cortex, and then boom, there's all my Houdini folders. Always, always, always work in projects if you can. And you should always work in projects. It's important. Okay. Next bit. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to say set project to Project Cortex. And just one more thing that I usually do is I'll do edit, and I will do aliases and variables just to make sure that's set. So I'm going to say variables, my job, boom, 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 Project Cortex. Good. Good, good, good. Okay. All right. So let's drop down a geometry node. And let's bring in those two files. So I'm going to say File. And I'm going to go get my brain. That's actually up 2. Take a minute to parse that file. So there's my brain. Wonderful. Just like it was in Maya, I'm gonna Alt and drag, grab this guy, and then I'm gonna go and get my my glass. Cool. So if I template this, show this guy. So we have both of these on here. So I know my brain is a little bit closer here than here. And I may actually end up maybe moving this thing around or like getting it to fit inside. Actually, you know what? Might, just to get the whole picture, I may even go back to Maya and spit out this guy. Okay, so what I want to do is there's a couple things I want to do to this. One, I want to scatter points on this, and I only want to scatter them in very specific locations, right? I don't want to scatter points down here because then they won't project anywhere. I don't want to scatter points in here, so because I don't want them to project through these plates onto the glass, and I really only want them to scatter and I don't want them to scatter like kind of inside of these creases, mostly just because for artistic reasons. So I want them to scatter like on these ridges, and I want to do this as procedurally as possible. So with a couple different ways we can do this. So I can just paint in. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint just a general mask. Now that won't be procedural, but for the curvature of this that will actually be procedural. And maybe I might even want just the top of this thing to scatter points. We'll see. We'll see. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down a paint, attribute paint. Or actually, I want to paint a mask. That's what I want. Boom. Let's show that. And so what this allowed me to do, and I'm just going to merge all these guys together and template that merge so I can see everything. There we go. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint where, like in general, where I want these wires to go. So I'm not really worried about, in general, I'm not really worried about the curvature yet. So I'm just getting a broad area, like something I can, you know, it doesn't have to be super detailed, is basically what I'm saying. So I got those edges, and then I can just kind of paint. Paint, so I'm holding down my right mouse button, so I can paint, I can erase, or actually that's smoothing, erase. Get a little bit too close there. Cool, so what this has done is it has made a it's made an attribute. So if I click on here, oh, actually I have it here. I have this attribute called mask. So it's mostly one. Some of them are like 0.09 in the faded areas, which is fine. It's fine. So what I can do is I can scatter based on that mask. So we can do that. Let's do that. So I'm going to do scatter points. Plug this in here. So right now, these points, and let's turn on my points, and I'll make them bigger. I just updated to 18.5, so my settings are a little off. So right now, it's just kind of scattering these points everywhere. So what I can do is I can say, hey, only scatter these points where I have this mask. So I can say density attribute. I don't have an attribute called density. I have an attribute called mask. So now we can see that only those points are only being scattered on my on where I painted. Very, very handy, very handy. So I can bring my force total count down, but these might still be. I want a little bit more detail in my mask. They're kind of like evenly spread out. So the next thing I wanted to do. So I'm going to take this attribute paint. I'm going to put this over here. And I'm going to make a, let's see. I'm going to make, let's do mask by, there's a new node called mask by feature, which is really interesting. So basically what this is doing is it's doing an occlusion. So if I go back to this guy, hey, Rushback, what's going on? So if I go back to this guy, I can say, so I can turn on my mask. So I'm going to turn on the visualization for my mask here. So what this is doing is it's doing a, it's kind of doing like a directional mask. So basically it's saying, is if you can see, it looks like kind of like a sunburn. So it's only the things that are pointing straight up and down are going to get that mask, which is pretty dope. So if I start to rotate this around, you'll see it'll almost look like I'm hitting this thing with a light. So let's do, yeah. So let's grab that, start to rotate that. So I can basically tell this mask what direction it's coming from. Now I could probably do this with some Vex, basically you're doing a what is it? It's the dot product. So it's basically the dot product of each of these normals against this vector. It's just nice that that it's all kind of sewed up in this nice little digital asset. And it is a digital asset. So I can come in here. I bet I can find the dot product in here somewhere. That's a group. Make light and shadow. Here we go. Yeah, so this intersect, I'm almost sure is going to be using that dot product. So, so we have that. So we have a directional mask. We have a hand painted mask. I'm going to do one more, and this one is going to be a little bit more complex. This one is going to be a mask of the curvature of this surface. So anytime we have like this super tight curvature, right, that mask should be black or white, and then when we have this nice even slopes, we're going to get a mask that's black and white. And generally in computer graphics and in just, you know, in visual effects and computer graphics, mostly what you're doing is you're building masks to hide an effect or show an effect. I think that's why like Substance Painter is so powerful. Is because it's not because of its painting abilities, it's because of its masking abilities. So all those generators and all those smart masks and stuff, that's what really allows you to have, you know, real ultimate control over the look of your character. It's because it allows you to very quickly and very intelligently, you know, place dirt where dirt should go, or place sun damage where sun damage should go, or, you know, partition a mesh off so like only the bottom half of something gets information, and all that is just black and white masking. Now we're using white and red, but it's the same idea. 0 to 1. Most masks will go from 0 to 1. 0 is off, 1 is on. The reason for this is because the mask becomes very, very simple. If I multiply two masks together and they're both from 0 to 1, that oh, hello. That number will still be 0 or 1. And we're gonna I'll demonstrate that here in a second. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to grab the curvature of this. So I can't do this on its own. So I have to actually turn this do I recommend an application called Blender? Yeah, Blender's amazing. It's great. It's a great way to start learning. It's made leaps and bounds in the last couple years. Like apparently 2.9 is very, very good. I don't personally use it, mostly because I grew up using Maya. Maya is the industry standard. So I've been working in industry for 12, 13 years. So that's just what I'm used to. So like I said, the best 3D program is the one that's available to you, and Blender's free, so you can't beat the price. I want my curvature. Okay, so that's going to give me the curvature of this information, and we can see it's kind of turned black and white in some spaces. And so I'm going to change this to custom name. I'm going to call this curve. So if I middle mouse on this VDB, now here I have a volume that's called curve, and it's storing the curvature of that VDB, right? So now I need to oh yeah, sorry, got distracted by to my geometry. I need to get it back from VDB land onto geometry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, looks like I'm having some problems with my stream today. It's a little slow today. Lots of people on the internet apparently right now. But no worries, it's recorded. Anyway, so I want to transfer my attributes from my VDB back to my polygons. So that is going to be a attribute from polygon. Attribute from not attributes. Let's see. Not attribute from volume. Maybe it is attribute from volume. Volume. Point cloud. No. That's going to be VDB. No. Attributes. What was that? Attributes from volume. There we go. And if you look really closely here, like the little icon tells you, it's like a little puff of cloud and it's got an arrow going to points. So attribute from volume. So here we go. Points to add attribute to, bang, and volume to use attribute, bang. So now check it out, bang. It's like, so wherever things are really, really curvy, this is black. Wherever things are not curvy, this is white. Now, so it's basically taking this attribute and putting it into CD. I can put this into mask. Right, so now I have value, and it only needs to be a float. So it doesn't need to be a vector. So I have this mask, and I can let's see, let's visualize this. Let's visualize my, yeah, so there's my mask value. And then I have this guy, right? So these values are not going between 0 and 1. So I need to normalize them. So I have this mask here. And they're not going between 0 and 1. So let's see if the volume analysis, scalar curver, attribute name. Okay, so so I need to normalize this mask. So what I'm going to do is I need to find my largest value of this mask. So I'm just going to click my mask here. So that's 185. And then my smallest value is negative 108. So what I'll do is I'm going to take and I will just remap this with an attribute rewrap. So attribute remap. Put this in. So I should be able to say, so I'm going to take my mask, right? And I'm going to put it back into mask. So my input minimum, if I look here, was negative 108. Negative 108. My maximum was 185. Now if I view this, so now, boom, there we go, right? So now these parts here are light, and these parts here are bright. Okay, so what I can do now is if I want to add some contrast to that, I can move this little slider, pull this little slider back. This is just like using Photoshop until I don't have those little creases anymore. So great, now I have 3 different masks that I can use. And I can also use, and I can also combine here. So this is my hand-painted mask here. This is my, here is my mask from direction. So let's let's do remap. Combine mask. So let's make this one a little bit brighter as well. So just the stuff that's facing upwards. And then I have my third mask which is my curvature. Cool. About a half an hour of just building masks, and this is super, like, this is really powerful, incredibly powerful. So so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename these. So let's see, this one I was painting attributes. We'll call this mask paint. Actually, I probably do a. I'll just do a attribute rename. That's probably safer. So I'm going to do an attribute rename here. Plug that in. So I'm going to rename mask to paint. Cool. And this one I'm going to rename mask to, let's see, dir. I'm going to call it directional, dir. Here. And then this one is going to be curve. Great. So now, if I multiply all these together, I will only get the areas where they all exist. So what I'll do is, I wonder if I can use an let's see, how do I want to do this? I can do an attribute copy. So I want curve, mask, and directional all in one stream. So let's do an attribute copy. So I'll copy here to here. Let's see. Attribute to copy is going to be direction. So I have direction and paint, and I'll do this one more time. And then I'll take curve. So now I have curve, direction, and paint all in one stream. More efficient ways to do this, but I'm kind of doing it on the fly. So now, here, so now I have my curve, my direction, and my paint. So now I can just multiply those three values together and get a new mask. So what I'll do is I'll do an attribute expression. So I'll do so we'll call this custom. We'll call this mask. It's going to be a float. The expression is going to be at curve times at dir times at mask. Or no, at paint. So now, if we visualize this again, should get just, yeah. So now we have, so there is our hand painted mask, right? There's our directional mask, and there's our curvature mask. So now when we scatter this, bam, bam, bish, bash, bosh, only those parts are getting scattered. So that is really cool. Now these are red because that mask visualizer is still on, so they don't really actually have any color. So very, very tightly controlling where your scatter points are going. Very, very cool. Cool. So next thing is, and if you were here last week, I'm sorry, I think I'm having some connectivity issues. I'll look into that for next week. But if you were here last week, I did like a little test to see if I could project these points onto the glass. So my glass is, let's see, my glass is here. So let's bring that down. Okay, so that's going to be my glass, and these are my points. So what I need is, so I don't need these masks anymore on these points. So my scatter, I think there's a way where I can say output attributes. I don't want to pick up any point attributes because I just want the points. I don't need any attributes that are coming from them. So if I show my normals, I don't have any point normals. So what I need to do, actually I do need to transfer my normals. So I need to put some point normals on this. So I'm going to do a normals. Okay. And then I'm going to plug that into there. And so that should give me, yeah, so I'm going to do points here. So that should give me point normals. And the point normal is just telling me which direction that face is going. So yeah, so now I have points, I have normals. Now I want to project these points along their normal until they hit my glass. So I'm going to put a null here. Null, say glass. Right, so that's called a ray. So I'm going to say ray these guys to this guy. So I'm going to do a ray. So this guy to this guy. We should see those points now stick to that glass. Wonderful. So that is almost exactly, like already that looks like what I have here. Now, the beautiful thing about this is, and some of you may be watching this and being like, why would you go through all that trouble? I could just hand place these. The thing is if I want more or less of these points now, I don't have to hand place anything. All I have to do is come to my scatter and say, take my total points. Maybe I want less of these little things. Maybe I want more of these little things, right? So it gives you a level of artistic control that you just don't get by hand placing stuff. If I want these spread out a little bit more, I can take my max iterations, start to push that up, and they'll start to push away from each other. Dope on a rope. Okay, next thing I want to do is I want to make a line that goes between each one of these points. I want to go from here to here and there to there to there to there. So I need to know I have these points and I have these points here. I believe. Yeah. So I have these points. So these points are stuck to the dome. So I need to figure out a way to mark where these guys came from. And that's called enumeration. Enumeration just means, it's a fancy word to say count something. It's like, okay, you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4, you're number 5. The difference between enumeration and your point number, some of you may be asking, is that your enumeration doesn't change. Like if I duplicate a point, that new point has the same enumerate value as the old point, and I can use those to draw lines to find, so I can find the generator point, as it were. So there's a node for that called enumerate. And that's called index. So now I have an index. I want to set this to points. So I have this point index. So index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 67. If I come over here, I have that same index value. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to whatever. Yeah. Oh, cool. Trash Tire. I'm glad you're excited. Like, so many students are terrified of Houdini. So many artists are terrified of Houdini. I was also terrified of Houdini. But once you realize it's just points and lines and a little bit of math, it gets really exciting, because unlike with like Maya and Cinema 4D and, you know, to an extent Blender, I don't think any other software allows you to exactly control programmatically where every single particle or every single point is on your model. You can even do this with particles. Like you can say this particle at this time needs to be here based on a mathematic value, and that is incredibly powerful, especially when you want ultimate art direction. Okay, so I have enumerated values here. I have enumerated values here. So now I want to draw a line between the two of them. So I need to merge these together first. So I'm going to do a merge. So, boom, boom. So now, if I look at my merge, I should have 2 of each number. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, blah, 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 blah. So now I can just use an add to put them back together. So I'm going to do add. Under my add, I'm going to go to polygon. I'm going to go to by group, and I'm going to say by attribute. And that attribute is index. Now watch what happens. Bam! Instant lines that connect to my glass. So they go from my, let's go all the way back up here, from my brain to my glass. Super cool. And if I turn on the rest of this stuff, so it's avoiding where I don't want my mask. So we can see that I don't have any lines that are like down, deep down in my curvature, like way down. This one's a little close. And I also don't really have any lines up here. So now I do have some lines here. So what I can do is I can just come up to my, let's see, where's my paint? Come to my paint attribute. And I want to visualize. So I got a little bit too close there, so I'm just going to say erase. I'm just going to erase these spots in here. I'll erase those spots, and then when I come back down to the bottom, all that. So now I don't have those two poking out in the wrong spot anymore. Incredibly powerful, like really amazing stuff. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next part. Let me save this. Let's go to my job. Let's go to Cortex wires. B01. Okay, now that we have our wires built, now it gets really fun. Now it gets really cool, because now I can do whatever I want to these things. So I'm going to turn on my points again. And so I know that they're connected to the brain and the glass, so I don't really need to show those things anymore. So I'm just going to turn that off. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to add some character to these, because right now they're just kind of like these boring straight lines, and I want to have a little bit of noise in them, right? I want them to shake a little bit, have like some irregularity. So what I'm going to do is first thing, I need more points in between here. I need more points in between. So to do that, I am going to resample my curves. So I'm going to say, give me not minimum distance, but I'm going to say, let's see, segment length, max segments. Show that. There we go. So I'm going to say 10 segments. So now I have each one of these has 10 segments going along it. So now what I can do is I can just throw an attribute noise on this and wobble these around. So I'm going to say attribute noise. So many convenient new nodes. These didn't exist when I first started using Houdini. So what that's going to do is, if we look closely here, so it's basically randomize the color, but I don't want to randomize the color. I want to randomize my position. So position. And it's throwing them all over here. They're all in this crazy spot. So what I need to do is I want to center these so they're centered. And I think I want to add. So I need to bring down their multitude, their amplitude a lot. Like, I don't want all that amplitude. I want just a little bit. And then the other thing is that my element size is really big, so I'm going to bring that down as well. Yeah, so starting to look pretty good. With the element size down, I can bring my amplitude up a bit. All right. So, and generally when you do things like this, when you do procedural stuff like this, when you introduce something new, you usually break something old. So what I've broken is, if you can see in here, let me actually turn this dark. Where's my background? Dark. There we go. Oh, it's starting to hurt my eyes. So you can see, like, this was my original one, and this is my new one. So I've lost my connection to the brain, that perfect connection I had between the brain and the glass. Sorry, my throat is a perfect connection between the brain and the glass. So once again, masking to the rescue. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a mask. We're gonna make a mask that is black at the tips and white in the middle. So the tips will stay pinned to where they are, and the middle will get all this delicious noise information. So what I'll do is I'll just stash this noise in a temporary attribute. I'm going to call this noise. So now I have a three-dimensional noise that gets plugged into here. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to make, so basically what I want is a U value, or what I call a U value. What a U value does is what a U value does is it starts at the start of any curve, right? It's 0, and at the end, it's 1. So there's a really simple way to do this, and I actually can do it already. So I did it up here in my resample, right? In your resample, there's this curve U attribute. So if I plug this into here, right, I get this curve U. So for each one of these little lines, they're going to start at 0 and it's going to go to 1. And I can actually visualize this. I'm going to make a color node. And I'm going to say color, and I'm going to say ramp from attribute. And I'm going to grab that curve view, and I'll make the tip, just like we were doing before. I'm going to make the 0 white, and I'm going to make 1 red, just like we had before. So here you can see each one of these little tips starts at white, goes to red, starts at white, goes to red, starts at white, goes to red. So what I can do with this now is I can take, and I'm basically making another mask. I'm making a mask out of this. So we can do this with color so you can see it. So I'm going to put my red in the middle, and I'm going to take my white, I'm going to take another white and put it at the end. So now, my mask, just like we were doing before, is only in the middle. So mask in the middle, mask in the middle, mask in the middle. Okay. So this is how you could do this with color. I tend to not like to do things with color because then you have to delete the color attribute later. I like to use just either wrangles or attribute remap nodes. Wrangles is the old school way. Attribute remaps is the new hotness. I'm going to do attribute remap. I'm going to plug this into here. And I'm going to say my original name is curve view, and then my new name is, I'm just going to rewrite that mask attribute that I had before. So I'm going to call this mask. So I have this mask here that is exactly the same as my curve view. So now I can do the same thing. So 1 is in the middle. Right, so I can view my mask. I can turn on my marker, so it's basically doing exactly the same thing. So I'm pinning these edges. So now I can reinstitute this noise that I made here. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an attribute expression. I'll plug this into here. And it's going to be my... So I'm going to look at position. So I'm going to say self equals... So I'm going to add that noise in. So plus equals noise, at noise. Do I still have my noise in O-I-S-E? Maybe it's V at noise. Yeah, there we go. So I have to tell it it's a vector. So basically I'm back to exactly where I was before, right? But then I'm going to multiply that noise by at mask. Bam. So we can see all of my ends are pinned down. So now, if I want this to be a little bit smoother, I can do Catmull ROM, Catmull ROM, Catmull ROM, Catmull ROM. So I think that noise is a little bit too severe. So let's go back up to my attribute noise. And we'll take my amplitude down even more. So I just want a little bit of noise, not a ton. And then if I want, I can take my offset. If I wanted to animate this, I could do that as well. So this is how you can do like really cool like electricity and stuff like that. Great, so that's really, really cool. That's really cool. So now we have kind of like these noisy wires that are coming out onto the brain and the brain and the glass. Okay, so let's wrap some geometry around this. So there's a couple different ways to do this, let's get rid of this color node and let me save again. All right, so the simplest way to do this is with a polywire. Polywire. So if I plug this in, boom, boom. So it's just gonna wrap a polygon tube around all of these guys. So I'm gonna make my width a little bit smaller. And I'm gonna take my divisions, let's do 8. So the reason my color is kind of weird is because it's picking up the normals from my lines, which I don't want. So I can just drop a new normal down here and recalculate those normals. Boop, boop. And do points. So now my normals look correct. So that's one way. Like if I just want that to be very simple. If I want to, so in here, like if I look in my concept, there's like kind of like these little nodules on the end of this. So the way I can do that is I can control the width here with another attribute. So I already have here, my, I have this curve U. So I can just remap that curve U and turn that into a width value. So I'm going to say remap attribute. And you can see it's just the same stuff. Same stuff over and over and over and over again. All right. So I'm going to remap. So my original name is going to be curve U. My new name is going to be, we'll call this width. And yeah, so we want, let's see, we're going to do it in here. And then here, I'm going to do wire radius equals at width, I think. Maybe it's just width. No, it's at width. Okay, so let's see here, 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 here. New name is width. Width should be 1 and 1. Am I spelling something wrong? It would help if I spelled width correctly. W-I-D-T-H. There we go. So my output max, I can pull this down. So the maximum it can get is that big. So I'm going to have it be maximum and then put these two little dots. And then so what I'd want is these guys. I want their value. But I don't want any interpolation. I want constant. Yeah. Constant. There we go. So as I don't even need that one anymore. So I can pull this value down. So I am kind of bound by how many segments I have here. So if I want those little in nodules to be smaller, I need more geometry. So that would be in my resample. Maybe I'll do 20 instead of 10. So now I have like those little pucker things at the end. That's the official name for them, pucker things. So it just gives a little bit of extra kind of personality. So it's not just like straight tubes. Like they look like they should be kind of something that is going to match up. Let's see. What else? So what else do I want to do this? 2 is okay. Maybe we'll go to 30. Dare we go to 30? Yeah, 30 looks good. 30's feeling good to me. I come from software engineering background. This looks brilliant. Just started learning Substance Designer. It seems that procedural is everywhere. Are you able to code the node graph with Python at all? Yeah, you can use generally now. So I'll answer those two questions at the same time. Yeah, proceduralism is everywhere. Like it's just a different way to work, and a lot of people are afraid of it because it's a different way to think. But as you can see, it's crazy powerful. Like I can go, and because at any time I can go all the way back up to the top of this and change. You know, I could change what my brain looks like, and all this would work. I could change what my glass looks like, and all this will still work. So you can't do stuff procedural all the time, like forever and ever and ever. But like you can do stuff procedural like a fair bit. Like, you know, sometimes things are gonna break. Like this guy is not working correctly, and some of these are not working correctly. But for the most part, I just generated like literally. Let's see how many polygons I've generated in a very short amount of time. I have generated 16,000 polygons without like cutting anything or placing anything. So yeah. Are you able to code no graph in Python? Yeah, you can code in Python. Like you can tell Python like what there's a Python interface in Houdini. But for the most part, you don't really need it. Like if you want to. Like, so for example, in Maya, like if you want to do kind of the same 8 processes over and over and over again, you have to write a Python script or C++ program. So in Houdini, they have these things called HDAs. And I kind of touched on one of those before when I was looking at the mask by features. So anytime you see this little lock here, this is actually a Houdini digital asset. It's a node that has other nodes inside it, and you can go pretty deep into Houdini before you hit actual code, especially with their with the dynamics graph. Like you can keep diving down inside of like let's say their flip fluid solver, and you'll just keep going down and down and down and down until you actually hit like math nodes. So Houdini is very open. Like it's not. It is. I mean, it's a software, so there is a bit of a black box, but it's incredibly open for development. I think Jeff Wagner, like one of the guys he's like huge in Houdini. He was talking about how some people had gone into their fluid solver and just rewritten like this one little part and written their own little node and just plugged that in, and everything else worked because it's all the same math. So it's really cool. Okay. So yeah, this is kind of like level 1, level 2. Now level 3, I believe, and I haven't tried this yet, so we'll see if it works. Level 3, and actually let's just see what this looks like with the actual brain turned on. So there's my glass. Oh yeah, that looks great. Looks really cool. Let's turn on the brain. Yeah, that looks super dope. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with that. Some of these that are getting really close are kind of buckling over each other. So I may have to bring down my noise a bit. So let's take 0.15. Yeah, I think my element size was just a little bit too big. So I'm still getting some wobble. I might even be able to bring my amplitude. So let's do 0.06 maybe, double that. Yeah, that's feeling good. I'm liking where that's going. Okay, so yeah. So what if we want to use custom geometry in here? So I'm just going to do a little quick test. So I have, these are my little wires here. So what I can do is I can actually inject external data into you can the UI is really, it really gets out of your way, and the thing I love about the UI is it helps you a lot. And going back to Maya, it's really hard because like almost everything you hover over in Houdini, if you leave your mouse there, has tooltips under it. Almost everything has tooltips under it. And I go to other softwares and it annoys me now when I don't. I'm like, why don't you have the tooltips? Like I very rarely, unless I'm looking for something very, very specific, if I need something quick and easy to answer, it's usually in the UI, which is amazing because Houdini's, to be completely honest, Houdini's their documentation used to be really, really bad, and it's so much better now. Okay, so custom geometry. So what I'm going to do is I have a, let's see if this will actually work. So I have 30 segments. So I'm going to make another line. So I'm going to make a line that also has 30 segments. Here. So now the difference between, let's make sure that I'm doing this right. So there's a difference between segments and points. So let's see if my epic ping gonna work. Yeah. I need to draw this stuff out before I do anything. So if I have a line and it has two segments, it has 3 points. Okay, so my number of points is 1 plus my number of segments. So that's a very important distinction. So points is 1 plus number of segments. So if I go to my resample, 30 segments, so I want this guy to be 31 points. And I'll explain why that needs to be that way here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another polywire. And this is just for testing. So the great thing about proceduralism. So let's say this is going to be my custom geometry. So I have my line, I have my custom geometry, and I want to inject this onto, I want to inject this guy onto each one of these guys. Okay? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a for loop. So hopefully this will work. So I'm going to do for each connected piece. So what it's going to do, and for those of you who kind of know about programming, you'll know the for loop is kind of like the bread and butter of everything. So it's just going to I'm just going to do for each line. So it'll do, so I'm going to do this one, then that 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 one, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to do for each connected piece. I plug this in. So this is now my loop, right? It'll like the node graph will kind of get stuck in this eddy until it goes through each one of these guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deform this guy, this piece of geometry, into this loop. And this is bonkers. This like bent my brain in half when I first saw this the first time. I was like, wait, what? Like, I have not seen, I don't know of any other software. Maybe Blender, because I don't know it. Maybe Cinema 4D can do it, because I don't know that one either. But definitely not Maya. Cannot do this, what I'm about to. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to deform this guy. So I'm going to do a point deform. Okay, so the point deform takes 3 inputs. It takes a mesh, it takes a rest lattice or rest point, so that's my rest points, and then my deform points. Now my rest points and my deform points have to have the exact same number of points. So that's why I was doing that little calculation. So if I plug this into here and I plug that into there, voila, boom, look at that. So let's do, let's bring our radius down like 0.01 maybe. 0.01. So basically I've taken this geometry and I've projected it onto all those points. Let's see. Let's turn this down. So we're getting some, let's see, capture and deform, capture, deform, capture and deform. Okay, cool. So I can put anything out here. Like I just used the polywire because it's simple. So let's do length. Yeah, length doesn't matter. It looks like it's stretching it to match. So that's really cool. So I think I'd have to play with some attributes to get this to not flatten out like this. So I'm getting some shearing in here, but type. Polyline, yeah. So let me see. I want to try and figure out why this is doing this. So let's look at that. There's my lines. So those actually look okay. It's these really short ones that it's not liking. Or actually no, it's going correctly. Like this is just folding in on itself. Okay. So it's always good to like look at like it's like okay, well what is this doing? Why is this doing it? Let's bring our radius down and maybe we can bring our segments up just to see. Is doing. So there's my polywire and yeah, they're my segments. Little wiry things. So yeah, it looks like it's doing its job. Some of the ones in the back that are really short that are folding over on each other are having some trouble. So the thing that I can do now is, now that I know that this works, the great thing about the way that Houdini works is like whatever I feed in here, as long as it sits on top of this line, it'll still work, right? So if I take, let's just do a length of 1. Let's do some real quick modeling. Do some really quick modeling. So I'm going to make a tube. I'll make it polygons. Let's see, it's got a radius scale, so let's put that up like 0.1, 0.01. And we'll lift it by 0.5, so I'm gonna put my center at like 0.5. I'm working really small here. And on my divisions, or my, let's see, where is it? Rows. Let's do, I did 30 before, so I'll do 30 again. Maybe I'll do 60. All right. So there's my tube. I want caps. So I'm just going to do like some really, really quick and dirty modeling. All right, so with the tube, I'm going to make 2 end caps. Right, so I'm going to make a cap here and a cap here. So I'm going to do a transform. So this will be my bottom cap. So I'll take this guy and move it down. Actually, I will scale this down and then scale it up. So I'll scale this down this way. And that way. There we go. If I put a cap on this, I do want end caps. Yeah, there we go. So there's that guy. Now normally I would be way more careful than this, but there's that, and we'll do this guy will be the other end. So I'll merge these 3 together. So I'll grab all 3 of these and throw them into this merge. I get this. And then so now I'll take this guy and plug it into my point deform and see what we get down here. So there we go. So what this is doing, so if we diagnose what this is doing, this is actually really interesting. So our point deform doesn't know about rotation, right? So it's deforming these guys, but like everything is still just straight up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down. So maybe a point deform isn't going to work. Maybe I can use some other type of deformer. And the great thing about Houdini, and I keep on harping on this, it has an overarching philosophy. Most of the deformers follow this format, right? So they have your geometry, it has your rest, and then it has your deforming. So maybe instead of a point deform, I can use a wire deformer. So a wire deformer, I believe, takes into account the directionality of something. So let's try that. So I'm going to do let's type of wire. So I have a wire capture and a wire deform. Now you saw that briefly over here in the point deform where it says capture and deform. So there's no option for that here. So I have to capture first. So I basically have to paint my weights. If we're going to put this in Maya speak, I have to paint my weights on the geometry, and then I have to deform it. So same thing. So we're going to say geometry to capture, and wires to capture. So I'm going to plug this into here. Let's view that. So there's my capture regions, and I make sure this whole thing is red. Yeah, so make this thing red, and then it's going to be the same thing, right? So geometry to deform. So that's the geometry that has the capture data on it. So here to here, rest lattice here to here, deforming wires here to here, and here to here. Yeah, so these are looking much, much better now. So the middle part here is sticking, and the ends are actually sticking quite nicely. So I think my end caps are way, way too big. So we'll take both of those. Let's go back down. Let's grab. And make this smaller. And this guy. We'll do the same thing. Make that smaller. So let's go back up and look up here. They're still quite large. So maybe you need to go even smaller. But the point is now you can use custom geometry to add more visual interest. Now look at our wire deform. Let's see what we can do with this. There's not much you can do. Most of the work is done in the capture. Let's see what else we can get. So bias displacement seems to work a little bit better. Actually, a lot better. That's working way better. Way better. See what else we got. We have weighted. It's about the same. Max displace is tearing those in ones. I'm going to do bias displacement. It looks like we have a tension modifier that's going to try to fix buckling. So let's... So align tangent, and then line tangent around attribute normal. I think align tangent. Cool. Yeah, that's looking really good. I'm liking where this is going. What else can we do? I got about a half an hour left. Sweet. What else can I do? So this is custom geometry. Let's clean this up a little bit. It goes there. What if I think let's try something. Let me try something. Let's go to here. And this isn't very procedural. And this is how you can mix procedural and non-procedural stuff together. What if I wanted to project this piece onto the brain and maybe this piece onto the glass, so that like if the glass curves like those points kind of suck into that section. Is that possible? Let's see if that's possible. Let me do some cleanup first. I don't need this old point deform anymore. And this is the stuff I really, really enjoy. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to learn about like explosions and fluid and stuff like that. I like absolute control. Like I like being able to be like, all right, you go exactly there, and you go exactly there, and you go exactly there. I like Sims. They're pretty cool, but they I just like they have a life of their own. And you have to be very, 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 very talented to control them, and I'm not. So yeah. All right, so I'm gonna make two groups. I'm gonna make one here, and I'm going to make one here, up here, and I'm going to try to project. I'm going to see if that projection will work. I don't know if it will. Let's see. So I think what I can do is I can go to my selection mode, and I can grab one. I rarely ever select anything in the viewport, so it's kind of strange. There we go. So I'm going to select something in the viewport. I'm going to say group. So that's one group. We'll call this base. And then I'm going to do the top. Select top, tab, group. Call this tip. Now these aren't procedural, but I just want to see if I can get it to work. Okay, so now if I look here, so I should have two groups called base and tip. So generally how I check for this is a blast node. I should save this. blast here, and I should say, yeah, so there's beast. Having trouble spelling today. There's bass here. Should get delete non-selected. So those are all my bass. Oh yeah, great. So here's all my little bass discs, and here's all my little tip discs. Awesome. So what I can do is I'm going to do another project. So let me clean up my graph a little bit here. Looks like some things got horked around. I'll keep that over here. And we'll bring this over here. Bring this over here. Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I want to go get my brain. So I'm actually just going to, is this my brain here? Yeah, that's my brain. So I'm going to, I'm just going to duplicate this, so pull that out. And we're going to bring this all the way down. Just going to cut that away and then paste it where I want. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take and project. So I'm going to do array. Now this might be a little bit heavy, so we'll see. So I'm going to array these guys onto these guys, but I want to say what group I want to work on first. So let's see. My group I want to be B, and then my brain I want to be projected. Kind of close. Let's not do project rays. Let's do minimum distance. There we go. So now, all of those base groups are projected onto the brain. So these are a little weird, but that's really, really cool that we can do that. So I'd probably want like less geometry in here, so I get a nice smooth transition into the brain really well. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the glass. C. Control V. Okay, so let's do another ray. And I tend to stay away from rays because they are really, really heavy. Extremely heavy. What's the recommended workflow with Maya? Do you just export the generated mesh and import it into Maya? Is there a way to get live update if you wanted to change attributes? Would you see a reference file in Maya? Okay, so that's a good question. So there's two different ways to do this. There's the kind of baked in way. So that's what I'm going to do at the end of this. I'm just going to export everything as an OBJ and just bring that back into Maya, and it'll just be baked in. You can't really change anything. The more advanced way is with something called Houdini Engine. So what Houdini Engine is you can pack up your Houdini digital assets and you can export them as an HDA. And Houdini has a plugin for Maya called Houdini Engine. There's a plugin for Maya. There's a plugin for Unreal Engine. There's a plugin for Unity. I don't know if there's one for Cinema 4D or Blender yet. But so what it does is it packages up that little piece of Houdini, like that little code chunk of Houdini, and Houdini Engine will run that little code chunk inside of Maya. So yeah, so you can get little bits of functionality in Houdini inside of Maya. I haven't had a need to do that yet, but it's there if you need it. I know that a lot of Unreal Engine functionality is really, really starting to work with Houdini engine. So pretty cool. All right, so same thing here. So I'm gonna plug that in. My group that I'm gonna work on is gonna be my tip, and then I'm gonna project onto the glass. And then once again, I don't want to project rays. I want minimum distance. So now all these guys are projected onto that glass. So I might want to, I wonder if I can subdivide this just to get a better projection. Okay, so some of these are projecting to the outside, of the outside of the glass. So to do that, I would probably either make a group for the inside or or just delete this outside one. So pretty cool idea. It's not as controlled as I would like. I think I like the other kind of way of doing it, which was let's see, was over here. So that feels a little bit more controlled overall. One thing we could do, we got about a half an hour left. We still have these two sets of points. We have this point, these sets of points, which have these normals, right? And then we have these sets of points, which also have those normals. We could just copy. We can take this merge, right? We could just copy data onto here, and then merge everything together, right? So this is the great thing. I love this. There's so many possibilities to do so many different things. So actually, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do to this. I'm going to make two groups. So I'm going to combine kind of both ideas that we've been working with. Or actually, all three ideas that we've been working with. Yeah, this will work. All right. This will be cool. If I have time for this will be great. So I'm gonna make two groups. So this group here, this is gonna be my brain points. These, make sure this is points because it defaults to primitives. And then this is going to be my glass points. Okay, so now I have my merge, and all that's going to stay the same. So let's just move all this. This is kind of like a big old, not failed experiment, but experiment nonetheless. So let's move all this over here. And this is going to be my main stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away kind of this stuff. And I just wanted to get a little bit thinner in the middle, but not be totally. Just wanted to get a little bit thinner in the middle overall, and then I'm going to bring this whole thing down just a bit. Okay, so these are my little tendrilled wires. Okay, so now I'm going to make the little knobs that go on the end. I'm just going to copy those onto these points because these points already have normals. Okay, so I'm going to make a little branch off here. So I'm going to take, let's just make a little tube here. Another tube. Let's make this a polygon. Let's make end caps, and we'll just take the height to like 0.01, maybe 0.1, and the radius to very, very small. We're talking about really, really small details now, which I find to be the funnest part, is when you get like these teeny tiny details. Okay, so I want to mark one of these faces, because I want one another like this. I want to make sure that they're facing one another. So what I'll do is, or I want them to face out. I'm gonna make a color node here. I'm gonna make this red. And my group, I'm just gonna grab a face. So that guy's red. I also want this to face down the z-axis, and that'll become apparent in a second. Okay, so what I can do now is, from here, I can copy this guy onto these points. So copy to points. Here, there. This guy's way, way too big. Let's just put a transform under this. Bring this way down. So right now, both of these red guys are facing the same way. What I want is, I want one red to be facing outwards and one red to be facing inwards, because I want to do that projection trick again on these. So to do that, what I need to do is reverse one of the normals. So what number is that? That's primitive 0. Okay, so if I look at these guys and I look at the normals again, I need to reverse the ones that are by the brain. So those need to go the opposite direction. So that's super easy to do. Our old friend, the attribute expression. And I'm going to do @in, normal. And we're just going to say negative self. So that should flip them over. Yep, but I only want my brain points to be flipped. So now this is out and that's out. And if I want to, I could just go ahead and merge these two things together. So now I have these little pogs on the end. So I think this is actually probably the best solution. Like I've split, instead of trying to solve the caps and the wires in one solution, I've split that into two. So I've solved this problem and then I've solved this problem. So now what I can do is I can do that projection again. So instead of that color, right, I just want to make a group at primitive 0. So I'll say group. The base group is going to be primitive 0. So look at this. So there's primitive 0. So we'll just plug that in. And we'll call this ray group. Yeah, ray group. Okay, So let's just go, and I'm just gonna steal this. I'm gonna steal these guys, so I don't need that subdivide anymore. I'm gonna cut this wire. I'll bring this, all this up here. So the great thing about working with trees is that you can graft branches. So actually, I'm just gonna cut this off. Don't need that anymore. Actually, I'll just get rid of all this. Or I could use it later with something else. So let's see. Let's see. This stuff. Getting lost in the woods here, kids. This stuff. Right? So this guy is going to... No. This is going to get rayed into here. So instead of base, I want my ray group. So now I'm getting all of my groups. And you have generally when you're working with Houdini, and like I've never done this before, I'm just working through this problem. So I think my, let's see, let's see, let's see my points, and then I'm copying. So I may have to copy each one individually. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to copy each one individually. So I'll need 2 of these. Because what's happening is my ray group is on both ends. So they're both getting projected down here. So I need one ray group, I need a brain ray group, and I need a glass ray group. A lot like I did before. So yeah, so we can reuse this. So this is that, and that's that. Okay. So I'm gonna take, these are my, these here, those are my brain points, so they're gonna come into this guy. So I get my little poggers there. And this one needs to be flipped, so that goes there. And then that gets rayed down to the brain. Yeah, so there we go. So we can see this guy is perfectly matching on the brain. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for the glass. So it's dividing and conquering over and over again. So I'm going to copy my copy. This one is going to come from here. So those are my outside ones, and those are going to get projected onto the glass. And so I need here, I need ray. It's getting rayed down. I do need to invert both of these. Let's see. Okay. These are my glass points. Let's look at my normals. There's my normals. There's my glass points. There's my normals. Get rid of that group. rid of that group. This is coming in here. Let's take away ray. There we go. So that, I put my ray in the wrong spot. So group should be ray. Here. Yeah, there we go. So that's now rayed down, and then these guys can get merged together. And then all that gets merged in here. So now I have these little pieces that are perfectly rayed, or like suction cupped to the brain and to the glass. Super, super great. Like this is really cool. Okay, so finally, last thing we're gonna do. So I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna get rid of this guy. I might come back to that later. So this ended up being quite much bigger than I thought it was going to be. So all this comes down here. So this section here is my little toggles. This section here is my wires, and then all this up here is just building my mask. And so the last thing I'll do is I'll just export this whole thing. So I'm going to do a raw geometry output, and we'll call this, so it's going to my hip, and I'll call this brain wires .obj. Okay, so I'll just write that out, save to disk. And if I go and look, in, let's see, that's my cortex wires, geo. There's my brain wires, obj. And if everything is written out correctly, there they are. So I can drop those into Maya, see what happens. Make sure to see if everything lines up. Hopefully it does. And there are my brain wires. Sweet, sweet action. So let's bring back my glass. And I'll give this just temporarily. Let me save this. And let's give this a favorite material. Let's give it a blend. And let's give it some transparency so we can see through it. Maybe a little bit of color. This is just for visualization purposes. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's turn off our... That is fantastic. That looks amazing. I'm super happy with this. So a few bumps along the road, but nothing worth doing is easy. So I'm super happy with this. Look at that. Look at that. That is absolutely fantastic. So a little bit of Maya, a little bit of ZBrush, a little bit of Houdini. Use all the things that are available to you. Now, I'll probably work on this and clean this up. I really don't like having these giant n-gons here, so I'll probably actually model some proper in pieces, bring those. I can model whatever I want. I can model stuff in Houdini. I can model it in Maya. Hell, I could even model it in ZBrush. And I can bring it in as a file, and then boom, boom, boom. As long as it's got, you know, something that can ray onto these surfaces, it's all going to work out really well. So that is my stream for today. Went over a lot of stuff today. Went over masking, went over ray projection, went over for loops, all sorts of stuff. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I know my feed this week is a little choppy. I will try to rectify that by next week. I'll go yell at my internet service provider and be like, give me more speed. Yeah, like this is looking. I'm super happy with this. I'm super happy with this. How this turned out. I may even, while we're offline, I may even go in and do what I said I was going to do before. I may use that that for loop. Maybe I'll go grab some of this kit bash stuff and put some of that stuff up in here to make this look really, really good. But that's the beautiful thing about Houdini is once I have this system, once I have that system worked out, you know, I can just drop in new stuff. I can always drop in new stuff. So, yeah. So if you have any more questions, you can go to cgspectrum.com/3D modeling. I'm Bryan Bentley. This is the Wednesday night modeling stream. Thank you so much for hanging in there. I will get my ISP on the phone immediately and work out these connection issues. Thank you for coming, and I will see you next week. Bye.